And then this is the start to finish. So it is for people that said I lost all my gains and don't believe that muscle memory is a real thing and don't think that TRT plus is a significant protocol. There's your evidence. I'll just do the screen then. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, this is the okay. Where do we start?
What people have to consider, though, by the way, too, is like Steve takes the most like clean images that are representative of progress in the same like lighting. Like you could easily take shots in the gym and look 100 times more impressive. So like people don't understand like how fucking huge you actually are when they see this stuff. I just want to point that out from my own personal perspective, because like I hate when people see something like this versus if they saw Steve in the gym like lifting, they'd be like, "What happened, bro? Like, what? Like, did you hop on a cycle?" It's like no one.
Go to my channel and watch some of my training videos. So you can get an accurate representation of what I see. So these are freaking old. These are right before I started this cycle at 92 kilos. Right. So this is starting after being off cycle for 8.5 months. Wow. So this is what I was able to maintain after coming off cycle for 8.5 months.
Can I ask you, Steve, how much did you measure your arms there?
No, that's probably like 17, 16.
17,
I don't know. Something like that. I don't know. I never measure my arms.
Oh, you don't?
I'm sure somebody's going to show up at the gym and start measuring my arms randomly. We need proof. Here are my arms right now. So
I would be shocked. I would be shocked if they were only 16 in this even. Because they look bigger.
They look way bigger for sure. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what she said. Okay. This is the start. 92 kilos, skinny AF with a testosterone level of 600 nanograms per deciliter. Then I started my cycle, 156 milligrams of test, 125 milligrams of Primo, HGH frag, and a couple other stuff. It's all documented on my channel. I won't regurgitate it here.
That weird number, was it just like how you broke it down into everyday dosing, or like why was it?
No, so I have Bayer testoviron, which is pharmaceutical grade, and those ampules are overfilled. So when I draw out of the ampule, it's supposedly 1 milliliter, but I get 1.25, 1.3 milliliters even. So really? I had to it's from the pharmacy. So don't anybody tell me that it's fuck. I have a script for this stuff also.
No, that's good. I was just impressed.
So it's overfilled. So I can like space that out over multiple injections and get like, right. I was doing like a quarter ampule twice a week, Monday, Friday, for a full ampule over 2 weeks. And that would calculate down to about 156 milligrams per week. And it's the same with the Bayer Primo. That's one full ampule is overfilled to about 1.25 milliliters. At 100 milligrams per 1 milliliter is 125 milligrams, right?
Now, Steve, can I ask you, wait, Steve, have you been using equal amount in the beginning, Primo and test? One ratio?
Close to. So that's 156 to 125. So a little bit more test.
How does were you using HCG also?
No, I added it in a couple of weeks later. So my estradiol came up from 30 to 40.
Oh, you get 30 on that, like equal amount?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Some people, they Primo like really kills them.
You have to keep in mind though, Steve doesn't have access to liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry.
No, it's all CMA.
Yeah. So like we don't actually really know.
Oh,
to be honest. Yeah.
It's how much percent difference is it? 10,
pretty significant, dude. Like when I did my DECA monotherapy experiment, it was showing I had in range estradiol at like the high 30s, when in reality it was like 7.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So to cofactor the estradiol, my HDL is about 50.
Oh, nice.
And the SHBG came down from a lot to now 19. Wow. So that's quite a significant drop. Yeah, even though I'm on raloxifene, we can discuss that later.
Yeah, we need.
It could also be because my thyroid markers are declining due to this caloric restrictive state, and sex drive. So the estradiol must be in range. Okay, this is week 5, 98.5 kilograms. So I gained over the course of 5 weeks, coming back on this pathetic TRT plus protocol, 6.5 kilos.
Holy crap! Look at that difference. Wow.
That's when I made my studio also, when I started. So this is fantastic. Now, so you see this youthful face, right, a little bit depleted, to a full face again. And this is what I tried to prevent, but unfortunately I was not able to maintain my boyish good looks. All right, this is week 6 after a week of fasting, right? It was the first fast. So I dropped a decent amount of fat. You guys probably can't see the difference, but I lost about 2.3 kilos on the scale.
Wow. Yeah, I can't see the difference in the waist. If you look at the waist, yeah.
Here, this is the difference before and after. So this is 2.3 kilograms down. This is deploying every fat-burning aid known to man besides DNP.
Wow. By the way, I don't know if you guys would be interested, but cardarine is being tested in humans again.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, you showed us. Yeah, we should talk about the pharmacology of that. I mean, it's pretty. You know, there are drugs that target that are available. Like,
so you see how much my lower back came down over this 1 week.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
All right. So this is still a little bit chunky. Right. It's only week 6. So I went from.
Oh, look at your upper back definition. Really, that was very fast.
No, that was a huge progress. Okay, this is week 9, 99.7 kilograms. So that's 200 something pounds. I don't know, no pounds. Sorry, guys, I didn't mention that here. This was after 5-amino 1-MQ, which is a new compound that is shows a lot of promise to aid in fat loss. Yeah. So here I looked good already within 9 weeks of being back on cycle. Then I got a little bit sloppy. I went on holiday. Then I looked like this at 100 kilos. So that was last week. Right? So I gained a little bit more size, got a little bit fluffy. So this is 100 kilos. Look okay. Then I fasted again for 6.5 days. Looking like this. This was last Sunday. Now we can compare, right? Now
Why
we can
you keep
compare.
fasting?
I like fasting.
Oh,
I mean, plus I don't go to the gym and I get more shit done, you know. But last week was pretty tough because I didn't use the liraglutide.
6.5 days though, with no assistance. That's
nothing. I used calcium diglucarate and EDTA disodium chelation. That's it. Yeah, I was miserable. So I did add a little bit of vegetables on day 5 and 6 because otherwise I couldn't make it. All right, so this was the fasting progress, so a little bit better than the previous progress. There's less water retention, and better start, better finish. And then this is the start to finish. So this for people that said I lost all my gains and don't believe that muscle memory is a real thing, and don't think that TRT plus is a significant protocol. There's your evidence.
Well, with the caveat, I have to mention, I was surprised also, like a low androgen doses with the muscle memory is very effective, especially if it's for a reason. But hey, Steve, your body, I'm really impressed. Now that I know more about bodybuilding, like your body is so completely developed, you know, your hamstrings very well developed, quads very well developed, the whole back is rhomboids, everything very well developed. You really look
should be after 23 years, you know, should be. Like I could always improve a little bit here and there, but I think I got a pretty well-rounded physique, you know, need a little bit more quad size, but you know, people that just watch the Olympia and they see all these thunder quads, yeah, it's hard to compete with that, you know.
Well, you have to be Egyptian for that.
Yeah, right. So I think I'm pretty balanced. You know, there's always room for improvement, but fuck, it's bodybuilding, the most criticized and allegedly negative sport that you can do. Like,
no, but people, it's rare.
You need more quads. So what about my lats, dude? Just give me a compliment on the lats. That's fine. Yeah.
No, the reason why I said is it's just rare because you're a coach for competitors, but you don't compete yourself. So usually when people don't compete, they don't have that they miss something. You'll see a missing body part, but you don't have one.
I love this shit, you know, at the expense of my own health a little bit. Okay, so this is the fasting from last week. So here we can see the start. Oh, is that the start? No, yeah. So this is my absolute skinniest after 6 weeks of the fasting mimicking diet to resolve the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So the time frame between this is 5 months. So this is basically the picture what I looked like at the previous BioBros. So from BioBros 7 to BioBros 8, these are the gains. These are the gains. And I think I preserved my face pretty well over that, right? Because that was my main issue. This is almost disgusting. How much difference? And this is the 1 year progress. So on the, sorry for the horrible face, 115.8 kilograms.
Notice Notice the belly, the difference, how much smaller your waist is.
Yeah, this is what I'm very happy about. So a year has passed. Everything came down in size, obviously, including my face. I look a little bit younger though, but my stomach is, so people always ask, you know, how can I bring my waistline down? So I'll take a year off, do some fasting.
Visceral fat.
And, you know.
I mean, your skin even on your abdomen is loose now. But it's
it's a little
bit loose, which is a very impressive. Yeah, very impressive.
So all in all, I would say that's still a year well spent.
Yeah,
You know, even though I had to go through hell and spend hundreds of thousands of baht on medical bills.
All you missed out on is checking your grim age in the beginning of the year, and then
I should have done that. Yeah, I should have done that. Yeah.
How do you do that, by the way?
Oh, there's companies that sell it. There's 3 or 4 clocks. The grim age is the most accurate epigenetic clock.
Is it easy for us to get a hold of that for our company?
Oh yeah,
because obviously we want to have like our own saliva kits, obviously, but then above and beyond that, if we had our own,
we absolutely can. Absolutely, yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah,
actually, we were just talking about this today. We have a lot of updates on it for it.
Yeah, I have to go listen to go check your message. By the way, I'm like a few days behind. So.
Don't worry, I'm never in a rush about that stuff. Hey, Steve, tell us about the raloxifene experiment. But before you do, because SHBG is a thing I get asked about, and I never talk about it. So tell us, like, people want to minimize the SHBG. The people with the lowest SHBG are the people with the most visceral fat. So it's an odd thing to want to do. So can you explain to us why maybe minimizing it through every route is not necessarily the best way to go, and maybe you need SHBG also?
Well, you need it for a multitude of different reasons. So one of them, let's rewind the clock a little bit and go back to the forum days where that was the predominant source of information. And then somewhere there, people started saying that sex hormone binding globulin holds your testosterone hostage.
Yeah.
And so your testosterone is in the sex hormone binding globulin. Estrogen can also go in the sex hormone binding globulin. That's why it's not called androgen binding protein, which is also produced in the testicles. But I think that only delivers testosterone or DHT to the prostate. Could be linked to prostate cancer. So you have sex hormone binding globulin in the blood, and people think it holds the testosterone hostage, when in reality, the liver produces sex hormone binding globulin to transport sex hormones to tissue, similar to albumin. But the sex hormone binding globulin, the androgens and the estrogens are bound more tightly, and the albumin binds a lot of different hormones and molecules. So, and that's loosely bound. So that's why you have a differentiation between the total testosterone, the free testosterone, and the bioavailable testosterone. Total testosterone is just all the testosterone in your bloodstream, right? Just like the total cholesterol, even though that's a horrible way to calculate it from the HDL and LDL, because those are lipoproteins, and cholesterol is a cholesterol molecule. Still don't have a reason for that, but it is what it is.
Wait, just to explain to the audience what he's saying. So a very good point is that when you're measuring your cholesterol, he's saying the total cholesterol measure is just a measure of the mass that your cholesterol particles carry. But you're interested in the particles, the number, and the different kinds of them.
Right. So, but cholesterol is a molecule. The lipoproteins are carriers.
Yeah, the lipoproteins attached to the proteins attached to the cholesterol, and they're measuring the mass of the cholesterol, which is
exactly. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, so look at sex hormone binding globulin. It's the same way you have red blood cells or lipoproteins. Right? They all have a unique function to transport molecules through the bloodstream. So you have free testosterone that's not bound to sex hormone binding globulin. And then bioavailable testosterone is not bound to sex hormone binding globulin and albumin, right? So there's a differentiation between those. Now, somewhere on the forums, people started saying, listen, your testosterone is not active because it can't bind to the androgen receptor if it's in the sex hormone binding globulin. So you need to crush it to zero. And we can use proviron for that, right? Which has the highest affinity for the SHBG. So people started using proviron, and in the first 2 weeks, they got a beautiful libido.
Yeah, it lasts 2 weeks.
Ravenous libido. And then you go to the message board, you start type, dude, this worked. You're the king. My wife is, well, I'll spare you the details. And then week 4, some people come back, some people are embarrassed, some people come back and say, listen, my libido is not as good as it used to be, so I'm going to increase the dose from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams proviron. Then their libido goes to shit, because now the SHBG is so low that you're missing out of androgen delivery from the liver or in other tissues of the body to tissue. Now, does sex hormone binding globulin directly bring androgens or testosterone and other androgens to the androgen receptor? Not exactly, right? It transports it to blood. It gets released at one point, allowing it to bind to the membrane or the nuclear androgen receptor, right? Or the membrane translocating to the nucleus. But there's also a sex hormone binding globulin receptor complex, allowing the sex hormone to bind to a complex, similar to how growth hormone binds to a receptor or IGF-1 binds to a receptor, which sends signals into the cell non-genomic signals by increasing cyclic adenosine monophosphate concentrations within the cell itself, which amplify nuclear androgens receptors gene transcription of the DNA. So now you have two vectors to optimize: anabolism through the sex hormone binding globulin receptor, and testosterone attaches to the sex hormone binding globulin, which is attached to a receptor complex, sending signals to the DNA, and with the androgen receptor. Now we have two. So why not get anabolism from two instead of crushing your SHBG with proviron, which has no anabolic properties or very little, and then all this free testosterone floating around in your bloodstream, similar to high glucose levels, prickling your androgen receptors in the brain, making you highly irritable, highly agitated, potentially inducing neurotoxicity. Right?
Delivering it to the wrong tissue.
Right. Yeah. So now we know, the last couple of years, we know that it's better not to crush your SHBG and not look at it as a molecule that holds your testosterone hostage. Look at it as a molecule that delivers androgens to tissue.
So one question that stems from that, though, is when you're on a blast, the likelihood that your SHBG is even going to be in double digits when you're on half a gram to a gram of shit is like impossible. So why is it so anabolic then? If you could use like anabolics you use in unison with it have different affinities for it, but it seems like it's totally, no one really even considers like any delivery of any anabolics other than testosterone via SHBG. And then even when we're on blast phases, our SHBGs, it's like impossible to retain it in any kind of level that would otherwise be able to leverage this like delivery system. So like being mindful of that, how does that translate into exposure outside of a TRT context? Because like I understand having disproportionately high free androgen signaling is like very bad from a cardiac standpoint, neurological standpoint, pretty much everything standpoint, except for maybe like performance acutely. But in a like a growth model where we're on supraphysiological amounts, like very rare you see a guy with like a 20 plus SHBG on like a blast. So like, what do you do? Or like, is it even something to be mindful of?
A couple of things is, well, just prevent it from declining unnecessarily, right? By not taking very reducing or SHBG reducing compounds like proviron. Another one is to keep your estradiol in a range, which regulates SHBG. Thyroid levels also have an effect on SHBG levels, so make sure that those don't decline too much.
That was one of the reasons I was on thyroid, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and of course, caloric deficit raises SHBG. Right, over time. So that's what I noticed. My SHBG was 130 during the fasting mimicking diet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's sky high. So
there's a precursor in the liver. It starts with the H. It's an acronym. It's like, I'm forgetting it right now, but it's like H4 or something like that. It's an acronym. That's the enzyme that gets affected by thyroid, by visceral fat, by a lot of other things that's produced by the liver that's needed to produce SHBG. I've been trying to find out all the things that manipulate SHBG. I keep being drilled down molecularly back to that same mechanism. My thought though, Derek, is that at least like if you're taking exogenous steroids with some testosterone, the SHBG, does it crushes your SHBG? When you add way more androgens, it crushes it?
Yeah. It gets lower and lower and lower because there's more delivery.
And the more insulin too, it's kind of like inverse relationship with the more, like this is why I don't know, like polycystic ovarian syndrome and any of these things, like you see an inverse relationship with like IGF-1, SHBG, carbohydrate intake. That's why keto diets spike SHBG levels. It's all kind of like.
However, I've drilled down into that, the molecular mechanisms behind that. It seems to be that it's not actually a proxy of insulin resistance. If you control for visceral fat, no longer the insulin resistance or the diabetes predicts the SHBG. It's supposed to be exclusively the visceral fat at the mechanism, supposedly.
I've seen before and afters on carnivore and keto diet guys who had female territory SHBGs just by adding in carbs again, bring them back down to like 40 to 50. And these are natural guys.
But so I'm on a ketogenic diet, right, year round, and still my SHBG goes down just with a little bit of primobolan, and I'm sure it will get worse. But what I expected, like I've recommended 10 milligrams Nolvadex before bed to some guys to bring their SHBG up, Now, that results potentially in a little bit additional anabolism, right? With increased delivery and cyclic adenosine phosphate non-genomic responses. But it also lowers your IGF-1. So you lose out on that pathway. So ideally, instead of just hammering the androgen receptors with testosterone or other androgens, why don't we optimize all the vectors for anabolism with a little bit, and then get anabolism that way. So I think that's one of the reasons why people are so surprised from my progress. It's because I don't just take tests. I optimize every vector, right? I was doing this 5-amino-1-MQ, which could also potentially have some anabolic benefits by increasing glucose uptake. So there's so many things that contribute to muscle gain, and people look at your dosages of test and primo and like, oh, that's not going to do anything. But there's way more in place than just that. So to come back on the raloxifene, selective estrogen receptor modulators are known to raise SHBG levels, right? So in one sense, it might be good to sustain SHBG levels. And in another sense, I did this experiment to see if it could shrink gynecomastia. I lost 3 millimeters on my age-old gyno on the right side and 2 millimeters on the left side after 8 weeks on 60 milligrams.
Let me give you a spoiler alert.
I know I already have my consultation scheduled.
No. I have an undue amount of experience with gynecomastia. I have a lot of experience with this personally. So I've tried years on SERMs. I've tried AIs. I've tried everything. I just want to let you know this is how it works. I'll just tell you the secret. So the gland grows temporarily when it's exposed. This is not from academic evidence. This is from my personal experience. It grows temporarily when it's in that estrogen or progesterone primed environment. So it'll grow like within 4 weeks or 5 weeks, a temporary growth. That's like it feels like it's inflated, just like you said. Right now you feel it's come smaller, right? The gland the tissue seems smaller, but it's still there. When you starve it of estrogen or progesterone, but mainly estrogen, for long enough, it gets smaller. But if you go off the SERM, it comes right back, even if you don't have high estrogen signaling. It felt like for me, comes back to whatever estrogen level you're based at. So if you're on test with no AI, it'll go bigger temporarily, but other than growing. Growing is also another issue. But I'm talking about without the itching, without the stinging, it'll be bigger, inflated, and then maybe your normal estrogen level a bit smaller. And if you use a SERM, it can be a bit smaller, but the problem is that it doesn't kill it ever.
No, I don't think so either. Right.
Anecdotally, when it comes to pubertal gynecomastia, like obviously a lot of guys who get gyno, it's going to be from anabolic exposure and putting their estrogen levels to, more than it otherwise would be endogenously. But some individuals, they get the gyno developed from that heightened level of puberty when you have GH and downstream IGF-1 cranked through the fucking roof, estrogen cranked through the roof through downstream aromatization, everything that could be stimulatory is maxed out. And then you get into your 20s and you have like residual massive glandular development, but it's not gone because it's residual from your like cycle you did as a teenager when it was actually just your natural hormone spiking. But in those individuals, I've seen like permanent management by using raloxifene and then coming off. It doesn't go back to baseline for those.
Brother, I tell you, Derek, I had it pubertal. I got to a point in my early 20s, nobody could know I had gynecomastia with my shirt off. Nobody could know. You couldn't tell. But it was there. The ball was still there.
No, it never disappears. No, but you can get it to it's so cosmetically insignificant that you might avert the need to actually get it cut out. And for somebody who's not a bodybuilder who's exposing themselves to all these androgens, maybe you don't need surgery. For guys who are going to like limit their ability to use like compounds that are substrates for aromatase and have to use like chronically use AIs or SERMs or whatever to maintain like their protocols, that's where I would be like, you fucking need to have like a gyno fund saved up and like make sure you're not using toxic drugs that you wouldn't otherwise use if you had no gyno. But for guys who have just pubertal gyno and it's like it's not so bad that it's unmanageable with SERM deployment acutely, but it's also something that's like not cosmetically significant enough to like actually justify cutting out. Like those individuals might benefit from a raloxifene protocol, get it to a point where it's cosmetically insignificant and you can barely tell, and then maybe you don't need surgery. But for guys who actually like blast shit, it's going to be like a consistent problem, like it was for Joe Stetics. He used to walk around with a undetectable estradiol. Like that's eventually was going to fuck him up in some way, and maybe it already did with the injury.
Also undetectable gyno.
Yeah. But like,
which I told him, said, "What are you doing? It's nobody can see it." You know?
No. Like now he can walk around with like a normal estradiol, which is like great and probably going to be like injury protective and like cardio protective, neuroprotective, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I just have a slight argument to the contrary, just because I've been through this personally during my lifetime. So that one thing, and in agreement with that, if you guys notice anyone listening to this who knows somebody who had minor pubertal gynecomastia, not somebody with tits, but somebody with like a little bit of development, you'll probably notice that by the time they got into their 20s, if they weren't fat, that thing disappeared or seems to have declined quite a bit. It happened to me also. It does go down when you're not in that estrogen environment. And I imagine you could get it down way faster if you use raloxifene or an AI for a period of time, try to starve it and get it to that place where it basically adjusts to your natural estrogen level. The problem is that while like, I don't know if Derek, if you ever suffered from this personally yourself, but while you may feel like it's not cosmetically visible, people who've actually had it since puberty have a psychological effect with it. It's really annoying. It's because you know it's there, and if you wear a certain like very soft t-shirt or something, it might show a little bit of a bump there, and it's feminine by nature. They're literally tits, so it's very upsetting.
It's very noticeable. Like I took a front double bicep picture a couple days ago, and I'm wearing like a light shirt, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I can't post this picture. So you have to take like 5 pictures just to make sure that
temperature sensitive.
Yes, temperature. Oh, I'll teach you another trick. For anyone who has
gynecomastia, in the mall, of course.
And if you like flick your nipple,
yes, I was gonna say flick it.
Just
twist your nipple. Twist your nipple if you go into an important room. You want people to think well of you. Just twist the nipple. It'll be tight. Go in a cold room. Nobody will see it.
I used to tape them, with like tape. Because it was so bad.
I thought of doing that so many times. Oh my god!
I did that. Yeah. And I would wear just a little bit of nipple tape just to remove it. And they just really press the edges so you don't see the edge through your shirt. So, but now it's quite manageable. So my raloxifene experiment so far, I've noticed something.
What was the experiment for the SHBG?
No, for the gyno. But of course, right? I wanted to see if it could shrink it. But my gyno was freaking old. Like I developed it when I was drug free after I broke my leg. It's really weird. I broke my leg in a motorcycle accident. And then I had a little bit of nipple sensitivity because I was immobile for 3 months. And I'll check and I'm like, no, bro. And then I had to go do an ultrasound on it, And then, of course, the doctor accused me of taking steroids. I said, bro, I haven't even lifted for 4 months. I'm skinny AF. What the hell are you talking about? So they didn't want to pay it from the insurance, right? Because it's cosmetic surgery. So I didn't have the funds for it. And then I should have done it last time I came off cycle, but I had so much work going on. So now we'll do it in March. And then I schedule that surgery next year, March, when I plan to come off cycle anyway. And then get it removed.
It's such a great feeling. It's such a great feeling to have it removed. You feel free. Yeah. You feel free, like, wow.
So for me, it doesn't really bother me because I always had like a little bit of stubborn fat on my lower chest, which is just as thick as the gyno. So you barely see it. My chest is well developed, so it kind of angles it down.
I can't even see yours, honestly. Yours is nobody
can, So, but it's present. And at one point, if I do want to remove that stubborn fat off my lower chest, which raloxifene is doing hands down very, very nicely. So that's the main takeaway of this. Tamoxifen takes the fat off your lower body, and raloxifene takes it off your chest.
That could be very, very well true. They really do have such disparate effects, according to
and then both, of course, in a caloric deficit, you need to do the cardio and then maybe have some other fat burning aids in place. But the fat on my chest is melting off, while the fat on my legs is remaining, which is annoying. But I might have to switch it up from raloxifene to tamoxifen. Always on serums.
I'm just going to go to the washroom really quick.
Yeah, sure. At least my SHBG will come up.
What were we talking about?
Let's wait for Derek. I still got some more stuff to talk about for the raloxifene.
Oh, good.
Because my liver enzymes went nice and high.
Yeah, I was going to say something funny. Is that, when I was a kid, when I first got the gynecomastia, I was probably, I was a little bit chubby, when I was 14, 15. I think that's maybe the reason why it had more likely to happen to me. I had higher estrogen level, whatever. But when it happened to me, man, the biggest regret I have, bro, is that I wasn't, when I was 15, if I just freaking knew about AIs or understood, I knew about them. I knew about them when I was 15, but I didn't really understand. I didn't know the risks or what could happen. Now I'm comfortable enough that if I was back at 15 and I got the flare, I could have stopped it with a serum, or I could have stopped it with an AI and just saved myself all of that freaking hassle,
Yeah, for sure.
I tried to get the surgery when I was a teenager. I didn't have the opportunity. Nobody was willing to pay for me.
No, me neither. Me neither. That's why I've been procrastinating. And now that I've been able to afford it, I don't really want to go because it's like 8 weeks downtime.
It's a lot of downtime. That's true.
So the last takeaway from the raloxifene experiment is that it raised my liver enzymes quite a bit. And that's why I'm just going to run 4 more weeks just to get the data and then see how much a difference of 60 milligrams per day to 120 milligrams per day makes. And then I'm going to discontinue it and then save the money for the gyno surgery, which I'm already in discussion with. I might end up with the same doctor as Joe Statics used, because he's a plastic surgeon and it looked very, very nice. Yeah, just 2 grown-ups talking about nipple incisions. You know?
About the liver enzymes.
Bro, look.
About the liver enzymes, though, you have to be a little bit concerned about the fatty liver. I have a feeling that fatty liver is much more common in high estrogen environments for some reason. I've seen some relationship between estrogen and liver cancers.
No, I know. And plus, listen, I don't want that stuff to return. So I'm very, very conservative. So before the fast, my liver enzymes ended up at, let's say, 50 to 70, depending on the markers. And then I took 6.5 days off of food, training, ancillaries, anything that passes through my mouth, right, besides a little bit of vegetables, and the calcium dichloride and the EDTA, and then they dropped by half again. So so they came down to like 28, 36.
Yeah. That's that people should understand this. The quickest cure to a higher liver enzyme value, just fast. Your liver takes a break. Yeah.
And take a week off from training because some of the liver enzymes come from skeletal muscle also, right? Or leaking into the bloodstream.
How much time should you actually take off from training before blood work? Like, what's the real answer that you guys
1 week.
Give?
1 week. But ideally you do it. Yeah, ideally you do it just right away because you want to see how bad your blood work is while you're doing everything you're doing for whatever aspirations you have. So if you're a hardcore bodybuilder, you do it the day before you step on stage. No fucking excuses. But they don't want to do it. I've done it. I've done it a day before a photo shoot. Oh man, you want to cry. You want to cry. Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, everything drops in half. So if you only do 2 weeks after the show, right, or a photo shoot or whatever you did to manipulate water, if you do it 2 weeks after, half of the markers are already acceptable, right, or explainable. And then you do it a month later, it's better. But for the 3 months leading into that photo shoot, they were shit. Yeah. They were absolute ass, you know.
But let's make it caveat for people. The main liver enzymes people look at are ALT, AST, GGT, and alkaline phosphate. What is
alkaline
it? ALP?
Phosphate.
ALP.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, the ALP very much affected by muscle damage in the body. You can't rely on that one. The AST, unlike the ALT, does not get affected by muscle damage acutely, and the ALT very little. The ALT and AST ratio is really indicative of interesting things like. ALT being high usually represents acute toxicity to the liver, like a night of drinking. If your ALT is 70 and your AST is 40 or 30, sounds like you just had a toxic event and generally have like similar good liver health. If your AST and ALT are close to each other, like 70-70, seems like you've had long-term inflammation in your liver and an acute liver injury recently. If your AST is above your ALT, you start getting into alcoholic fatty liver disease and some bizarre things. These ratios are very important. For example, GGT elevated by itself without ALP, indicator of acute damage. So you have to not But
so the weird thing is I've never seen my GTT over 15 units per liter. So that's even the bottom of the reference range.
Great.
Yeah, never. Still got non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but that's just the lifestyle, you know, cycling orals and never taking time off and then eating a boatload of food so you don't have to take so much performance enhancing drugs that you get something else.
Yeah.
This lifestyle is not healthy. Bodybuilding lifestyle. There's no way around it. I don't care what anybody said. I've lived it for 23 years and there's no way to do bodybuilding healthy.
Now, Steve, we've been talking about bodybuilding a lot. Do you have that article about the guys using Adderall in college?